Good morning. What is great, good, and real? And welcome to day 30 of the Do You Rules live stream experience. Day 30. That means we're out of our 20s. Feels like we're starting a new set of numbers. Because- oh, God. Because we are, which does a couple of things to me psychologically. It refreshes and renews in a way, but also that it brings to closure the end of the 20s. I kind of paradoxically feel like I'm missing something, but yet gaining something I've lost and maybe I'm finding, which is, I think, quite apropos for what I hope to talk about today. It's interesting. I typed in a description. I felt like I knew what we were going to do. I wrote some things down, and I get to talking, and it's sort of like you just, I guess, let life take over, right? Sometimes we overthink. I'm an hour into my day. I think about the arbitrary ways we put pressure on ourselves. Let's think of it like this. What time is it? It's 4:31. I like to think that I can get on as early as 4:15 if everything flows accordingly. And if I do, great. I feel like I've accomplished something. And if I get on by 4:30, 4:25, ironically, I also like the time of 4:23, just because the 2, the 3, and the 4 are in the time together, albeit not in succession. In any event, nothing's gonna happen if I don't come on at 4:15 or 4:30. But yet I feel immense pressure to ensure that I'm where I said I was gonna be, how I said I was gonna be, when I said I was going to be, because otherwise, I don't know, maybe I'm a liar. And it's not that real, it's not that serious. It's not necessarily that's me judging me in a sense, which is part of what I believe I want to discuss. We did a time check, we did a chapstick check. Every time I come on now, I realize that it's getting lower and lower. It's almost unusable. I say I'm going to swap it out. And naturally, I go through the rest of my day. I forget. Water, the Red Book of Thoughts. The Red Book of Thoughts. I referenced yesterday as I'm reading the book, Stillness is Key. I'm excited because if I really wanted to, I could probably finish the remainder of that book in the next 2 days, which, if you follow, you know, the first book I read for the year took longer than I would have liked for a multitude of reasons. One, it was a lot more in depth emotionally than the last two books I've read, or the one I'm currently reading and the one I closed. And also the experience of me getting into the flow of the year. A lot of reasons. There were a multitude of reasons that made the first book last longer. But here I am catching up per se, and that feels better. But also these last two books, respectfully, I don't have to think as much. I don't have to think as much while I'm reading them. They're very straightforward, very explicit in that way. And then I question the value of a book when what you're reading, you almost feel like you can write it, or you're writing it, or you're experiencing it. Does that make it more of a comfortable read or a less comfortable read? Is it less challenging or more challenging? I don't know. I ask these questions. But in any event, I feel good that I can sort of get ahead of pace in my reading. It goes back to arbitrary sort of requirements we put on ourselves. Why does it matter? It matters to me. If it matters to me, it matters enough, right? I'm settling in emotionally. I'm really trying to sort of let it flow. I really want to be of service to myself, and in that way, be of service to someone else. I continue to be influenced by the power and the belief within myself that if we can be of service to ourselves, We'll learn to be of service to others because in that way we're of service to all, which, hello, God, that's everything. That power of possibility continues to emanate and resonate and really just hit me deeply and is the most powerful form of satisfaction I can yearn for in my life. So if we consider the possibility of fulfillment, if we consider the possibility that we're 30 days into a journey, or wherever you are into your journey, and that we're looking to be purposeful at minimum, if we can use words to describe what it is we yearn and search for, purposefulness, fulfillment, success, our abilities to have that reside in us, I believe, when done and not in not so much of an egomaniacal way, because that happens, the realization that we could have come from a very, very large deficit, that we could have been very, very deep in the hole, and that we've seen some gains, we've seen some progress, and dare I say, we've come a lot further than we see the crowd has been able to come, that the ego in us could supersede the powerful emotion of contentment and understanding the finite for the infinite for the finite, the part and the sum of the parts that create the whole, that we could become so individualized that we somehow perch ourselves up, reach our own ivory tower per se, and become, again, egomaniacal about who we are, and then become a detriment to ourselves, thereby becoming a detriment to the whole. Because if we really think it's just about us, I don't know how you could not broaden your scope and look around and say it's so much bigger than you, right? If we consider that possibility, that the journey towards actualization and becoming and realizing can very easily put you on a path where you feel so powerful, you feel above, you lose the possibility. Not suggesting that it's even wrong. Go do that. You want to be egomaniacal, you want to be selfish. And even those words, what makes that selfish? Just consider that ego can be a huge detriment to the path forward and could restrict you and limit you from the perspective of, if you know there's no more than to know, if you already know there's no more to know. I've said this and I've been saying it's been a very common theme. I even used it for a script for one of the shows that's coming out. The scripted recorded show is coming out in a few days. But if you're closed off and you're not open, then there's nothing left to receive. So when there's nothing left to receive, what is there left to do but to continue to do, again, what you've been doing, which is great. But if you believe you've already achieved and now you've reached a capacity and a limit, then there's no more growth. And if that's where you want to be because you've elevated, great. But if you've elevated to the point where you can realize to pull others up with you, or that, dare I say, you can have humility to see the confidence in all you've built for yourself, the confidence in all you've achieved, the fulfillment in self, to elevate, look around and say, oh, wow, maybe others would really benefit from this. Even if there's a little slight bit of what we might determine is selfishness, to say, well, if I elevate and I elevate others with me, I lower the risk of me coming back down, right? Because what good is it if you raise the bar and you raise the level and you set a standard and there's no one there to enjoy it with you, right? Consider that. Think of that. And that, therefore, when you raise the standard along with you, the risk of falling back down, and we talked about if we don't progress forward, we run the risk of digressing, that when you elevate everyone else, the fact that they're elevated makes you more safe, more secure, and more sound, then you can continue to elevate and never reach a limit. That's a possibility. And then in that way, the collective becomes stronger. The world becomes a safer and a better place. Is that not logical? I'm just asking a question. I'm always asking questions. Because why wouldn't you ask the question? I question if you question. I question what you question, how you question, and when you decide to question. And that's part of what I wrote down. I believe, I think, if I can rationalize and reason my thought, and maybe I'm philosophizing in a way, and maybe I'm not. Maybe I think I am. But maybe thinking this way makes me be a better contributor to society, and I'll take that. Because the opposite is obviously not as conducive to successful living, right? If we can agree that if we're looking to attain fulfillment and success and actualization, then it makes us a more healthy contributor to ourselves and therefore by default life and God and universe and everything, then whether or not you get what you're looking for, that's sort of what I want us to get into too. I briefly was listening to someone who used the analogy of water. You put your hands in a river to grab the water. The more you clench and hold on to the water, the more it slips through your fingertips. And not only that, as you're grabbing the water's replenishing, the river's still flowing. Right? I said this before. Where are you standing if you're standing in the river? Same river, different water. And whether you're going upstream or downstream, that's a question for you to answer. But either way, the river doesn't stop flowing. Even if you put a dam in front of it, regardless of how big and strong, it'll find a way to either flow under, through, or eventually stack itself to go up and around, or even break through it. That's a possibility too, right? Think of all these things. We're talking about the impetus for us, the significance and the value of this message, whatever this message is, however you perceive it, is to improve. We're here to improve daily. We're here to improve as often as humanly possible in this one existence we have for as long as we get this existence. Because as life giveth, life taketh. As you get, as you invest, you're also being taxed. That's just life, right? Excuse me for one brief moment. And I'm back. So here we are, ranting and raving and trying to make sense of our lives. At least I think so. Because again, we are making an attempt to improve, however you deem improving. And sometimes improving is setting arbitrary deadlines with timelines that only mean something to you in order to hold yourself accountable. So let's get into some of the things I wrote down today. And I wrote some of these down yesterday morning as is pontificating. Man, I got to look up that word. That's what came to me. Pontificating. But really what I was doing was having some introspection, some reflection. I was pondering the possibilities of life as I was going through the monotony of life. And I wrote down, don't overlook the monotony. Don't lose respect for the emotional process. Pay attention to everything. And now in that way, paying attention to everything is virtually impossible in the way of consciousness. From the perspective of if you just decided to become aware and focused in all the time, you would burn out. You cannot do it. It is why the practice of stillness is so vitally important, particularly in this world today where we are notified about life by the second. It's almost as if it's this impossible game of trying to be as close to real time as possible. When do I believe, at least, we learn to pause, reflect, and stop? How do you stop time? You can't get ahead of time. I don't care how hard you work. You're never going to get ahead of time. As I've already said countless times, time is fleeting. The moments are fleeting. It is impossible for you to work ahead of time. Time's just going to go. So in that way, how could we possibly ensure we are paying attention to everything? If we can't use our consciousness, if we can't focus in, if we can't be attentive to every second of the day, because our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our souls, the way we're built makes it impossible, because that's some of our limitations. What do? I wrote this down, right? Stay with me. Stay with me. It's like that scene in Gladiator, right? Stay with me. As one. Remember, he said, as one. I used to say that when I would hang up the phone. One. Yo, that was a great conversation. All right, peace. One. As one. Unity, harmony, collectiveness, mind, body, spirit. I digress. Here's what I wrote. You feel that? 4:46 in the morning. And I'm feeling splendid. I'm feeling splendid. That's been a word I've been using lately to describe my life. Set a timer for 5 a.m. Okay. According to my timer, we have approximately 13 minutes and 8 seconds now before 5 a.m. And I get into some cardio. I gotta also create some thumbnails, get another video I record. I feel like I recorded the video of my life yesterday. But I also feel like every time I record something, I can record it better. So every time I'm done with my next recording, it's the newest, it's the latest and greatest video of my life, right? The way I feel like day 30, we're in our rhythm, on our grind, patterns and habits. I'm here on time. At least I said I am. I think I am. Doing what I said I was going to do, therefore I am better. And this recording to me already is better than my last one, because my life to me already is better than it was yesterday, because my life to me will be better tomorrow and the next and the next and every day I get. Why? Because I focus in on it. I make the determination to push forward and improve. It doesn't mean there aren't obstacles, pain, suffering, anxiety, stress, overwhelm. But in that way, I'm prepared for it. Why? Because I'm doing my best to ensure that as part of the improvement, actualization, and self-fulfillment, that I focus, that there's stillness, that there's breath. So therefore there's possibility still, there's chance, there's opportunity. The pendulum always swings. And as long as I'm here, I will put in maximum effort to where the pendulum is in the wrong direction. I do my best to sort of force it in the least forceful way as possible, in that I release, I let go, and I focus on prospering. Here's what else I wrote down, right? Don't overlook the monotony. Don't lose respect for the emotional process. Pay attention to everything. It's impossible, you say, Jeff. We must be aware as we are unaware. Tuned in while we tune out. Conscious while we are unconscious. Don't lose sight of focus. We must trust that we won't misguide ourselves again. What does this mean? Aware as we're unaware, tuned in while we tune out, conscious while unconscious. Don't lose sight of focus. How is that possible? I believe this is what we're practicing. This is what we're practicing. If we are seriously and sincerely focused in and lasered in on improving our lives, we have to, at this juncture, I would surmise at least, otherwise it's massively irresponsible, that you have defined what it means to improve on your life. How can you improve on your life? Pick a direction, any direction. I talk about this regularly, and quite ironically, I'm going to lose, and it eludes me, the name of the teacher. I don't know if it was Buddhism or Zen, but essentially he was the greatest arrow shooter in the world. And so naturally, everyone flocked into this man's school to learn how to shoot. And do you know that the first step and instruction that was given to all students was just to shoot an arrow without a target? And that in that way, by not having a target, you have a target, you have a aim. And that target and that aim is to simply practice, put forth effort, focus on the practice before you even aim at a target. For the focus on the practice and the awareness on the practice and the awareness on the process and the intentionality towards improving will eventually be confirmed when you do have a target and you hit the bullseye. For it is only confirmation outwardly when you do hit the target, when you do make the shot, when you do cross the finish line, of all the practice and effort that you put in to get there. The game isn't won when the crowd makes its way into the arena, gets their popcorn and sits in their seat, and the time starts and puts you into a pocket, a bubble of space and time that says you're on the clock. You're always on the clock. It's always game time. There's never a day off. There's never a moment off. At least if you realistically believe that you want to continuously improve your life. There is no more time to waste. There is no more effort to release, overlook, and allow to subside. Don't misconstrue and confuse the required rest, the required time alone, the required space, the stillness needed to separate and detach yourself from distractions, from the pace of time, from the reality that the universe and all of us collectively, through collective consciousness, are impacting you and I and us at every moment. And because we are but a very small part of the whole, because we are a fraction of the power of Creator and God and universe, the audacity and arrogance again of us to believe that the collective is not impacting us in the same way we can have a massive impact on the collective if we but put the effort forward to improve as we said we would improve. So how could we possibly be aware when we're unaware? How could we ensure that we're conscious when we're unconscious? And the other part I put is, how do we make sure we tune in while we tune out? How do we not lose sight of focus? And it is, of course, back to what I also wrote down, don't lose respect for the emotional process. Pay attention to everything. I believe in my experience, while I have embarked on this endeavor and journey and path and target and aim, the idea and concept of releasing and having a goal and an aim, but not being over specific with the target, not being conclusive on what you believe the expectations and the outcome will be. We talk about this regularly because it is vitally important. If I am only walking a path because I believe it'll get me to a specific destination and location and return me exactly what I am looking for, the reality is the specificity with which I am demanding life to return to me is also arrogant, misguided, and will leave you flat. Because there's no way with great specificity and detail that you could have any expectation of what life should be returning you because of your perceived effort, because of your perceived work towards what you think you should get out of the journey. It can't work that way. And when you are that specific on what you think that life and God and universe should be giving you, because time is always ahead of you, you won't get it fast enough. And the reality to how we work, and we talk about this regularly too, is as we are making strides to improve, and as we are making these little micro gains, because there are little micro gains that impact the macro. If we are eventually going to aim at a bullseye and aim at a target that is unspecifically specific, we need to ensure we practice the process that will get us there. Because there is also a reality to you should expect to achieve. Because otherwise, why would we embark on this journey? Which of course means you are receiving constantly, because the journey is the reward. The process is the reward. And in that way, you can't dismiss the emotions that are attached to what it is you're doing as you are journeying and endeavoring out. We must be aware while we're unaware. We can't drift and lose sight of why do we practice gratitude, graciousness, the ability to focus in on joy and love and all the positive emotional swings that come with that pendulum. It is also required in that way to understand if we lose awareness and we lose sight, then we could force the pendulum towards the stress, anxiety, the doubt, and all the other self-inflicting negative connotations that come with, I should just stop. Because as I'm learning, when we do lose sight, when we do lose focus, when we do become too unconscious and we're not aware of what we are in those experiences, we break down because our expectations are broadly specific instead of being specifically broad. You get what I'm trying to say? It's a matter of, I know my intent. I understand that I'm in a process. And part of the process is if I drift too far away into unawareness and I lose focus, I got to recenter. I got to reshift. I got to maybe go from 100 to the speed limit. Maybe I even got to slow down and park. And I go back to that pontificate word that keeps coming to me. But reconsider where I'm at. Level set with yourself. But don't just drift. Don't lose sight. Don't lose focus. That will absolutely break us down. And in the way that time gets ahead of us, time gets behind us really quickly. And it's when time gets behind us really quickly and we look back out ahead and all we can see is the missed time, that really ruins our mind, right? The idea that I've been consistent for 30 days. I talked about this the other day. Who becomes more successful? If I do this for 60 days, that's my timer, excuse me. If I say I'm on a self-improvement journey for 100 days and I do it 100 days straight, and we'll use the time of the year as a benchmark, but the other 265 days, I do nothing, versus someone who put in 10 days of work towards improvement every month for the entirety of the month and remain consistent in that way. Who's made it further? And then the play on the mind becomes, as I reflect back when I get to day 365, I can say, wow, over the course of this extended period, I gave myself enough time to be consistent to move the needle of even an inch. And that's powerful because that reflection will show that at least there's some intentionality, at least however slow. That's the tortoise and the hare, right? All these childlike analogies versus I did 100 days straight. I stopped for 265. When those 265 pass, they'll look a lot deeper than the 100 that passed with all the pain and effort that got you through the 100. You get what I'm trying to say? Looking back at missing out on 265 will start to make you imagine what could have been. That is what the reflection of life and the power of imagination and thought and expectation does to us. That we would expect something would happen if I do this every day. If I do it every day, every day, every day, every day without fail, if I just do what I said I would do every day, there's no way you can't make progress. There's no way you can't win. There's no way life doesn't reward you. There's no way you don't become better. There's no way that God doesn't continue to help push you forward on the side of life that you want to go to. There's no way that you don't impact self to a way that the collective will find you, support you, and also be your light. That's part of the principality of ethics and virtuousness and not being selfish, allowing yourself to be selfless. You will need help at some time. You will need to help at some point. You will need to be support, and you will also need to be supported. And so in that way, the actualization, the raising of the bar, the elevation that we seek only is possible as we elevate within and we elevate around. As I was reading yesterday, if I do not go within, I will go without. Consider what that means. And then let's go back to and close the point of, we know if we do it every day, there's no way we can't succeed. I don't know how. I don't know how broad. Fine, we get that. But the guarantee is, if you do not do it, you will look back and easily count all the days where you did not do it. And it'll hurt exponentially more than the pain it took to just do it. So simplistic, so childlike, so nursery rhyme and elementary, yet profoundly difficult for all that it could give us, for all that the improvement process, the actualization, the fulfillment of self could give us. It can take away in incrementally higher levels, particularly as we let time get too far ahead and then find ourselves very far behind in time. You don't want to be in the rhythm and pattern and habit of constantly asking yourself, what if? If only I. Imagine where I could have been. Those are emotions that are easily attainable for all of us and require the least amount of effort for what I would argue is the most amount of pain. We have to be appreciative of the emotional process of what happens when we go from awareness to unawareness, when we find ourselves aloof, conscious to unconscious. All these things are vitally important to our process because it all is just one rather arduous and, of course, strenuous process. But when avoided, will at minimum leave you exactly where you are right now. And if that's good enough for you, that's cool. Certainly isn't good enough for me. So therefore, I will just continue to be. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.